This content has been brought to you by my Patreons, and if you'd like to join them, link is in the description.
What's poppin'? Welcome to Overthrow Media, your best place for politics, hip-hop, and life. It is Big Villainous, your dope-ass MC, revolutionary comrade, and international sex symbol. Today we're going to be talking about the occupation of Palestine and the slow-burning genocide that Israel is committing. We come right back.
Living in the house of usher, parasitical and structure. The plague begins to cluster in the house of usher.
I usually do a big shout out, but if you want to support me, you know you can fuck with me on Patreon or got some of this merch, but I'm not going to go on to that because of the content of what today is about. I see a lot of conversations when we talk about Palestine and Israel, where it's talking about a two-sided conflict. But in reality, there's no conflict that's happening. It's not two-sided, but one-sided. It is asymmetrical. This is an occupation that's been going on since 1947, where these white supremacists came down and occupied the land of the Palestinians, claiming to have some ancestry to it. Some of the tactics they used to first claiming to things like car bombs, where they use car bombs to attack the Palestinians. Yet, we see all the time that we try to put that upon the Palestinians or Muslims in general. But it was white Jewish folks that invented that. And to be clear, I completely understand that there are non-white Jews, but there's also white ones. Those who tend to control the system and the state are that. But we gotta look at the role of Israel. Israel kind of serves as like a military base for the Western powers, specifically the US, in the Middle East, where they want to have protections for their investments, specifically around oil, water, just resources in general. This conflict isn't like these people don't know how to get along shit like we hear so often. This conflict is Western powers pushing in on the Islamic world, on the Palestinians specifically, on crushing them to get them out of the way so they can have a foothold, so they can persuade other nations to bend to the US and Western wills. This is not the first time this has happened. There's been full-on like pogroms and shit since Israel was formed. But even recent history, 2014, they killed 2,100 Palestinians, including 458 children. The IDF have had a reputation for murdering children from throwing rocks. And when I say children, I mean children. And it feels like a lot of the left is quick to back Israel. I mean, the liberal left, of course, but yet and still. Which serves pretty much as a fascist state to push a slow-moving, slow-burning genocide against the Palestinians so they can steal their land fully. They use retaliation from the Palestinians as justification for using their war machines to slaughter hundreds and thousands of people. They act like it's some type of equal exchange, despite Israel poisoning Palestinian water. They're confining Palestinians to one area and denying them access to resources and their own land. I remember feeling really disturbed when I saw recently as they celebrated the burning of a mosque, dancing in the streets with mad jubilance. The fall of people who are supposed to be your cousins, your brothers, your sisters, no matter how you look at it. At the same time, they're forcefully removing Palestinians from their homes, claiming to have a deed that's over 150 years old.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is gonna steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it. Yeah.
But do they respect the Palestinians' deeds when they have 150-year-old deeds? Of course not, because they're not Israeli. They push people to the brink, trying to push them to extinction. Yet we somehow empathize with the oppressor. It is extremely frustrating, to be honest, and disappointing to see how some of our own people may maneuver around this. When you criticize Israel, they say you're anti-Semitic. But there's nothing more anti-Semitic than Israel, because it's not just Israelis, not just Jewish people that are Semites. It's a Semitic region, bruh. It seems that most of what we think about when we think about this conflict is based off the interest of America, off the interest of white supremacy, the access to resources that are not our own. I say as if I'm a part of this nation in a real way. I'm black, so not even close. I also see people jumping on statements from American Palestinians that are being anti-black and seeing as a way to not have solidarity. But we can't have short-term memories and use Americans as a justification to not have solidarity. We have to see how they had solidarity during Ferguson, when it was our situation, when we were living through ourselves, and how they chose to have our back and give us information that we needed to keep ourselves safe in these conflicts with the police. It's one of those times that we return those favors. There's not, as black people, a lot of people of color that show solidarity, but Palestinians who are in Palestine have. Don't base off Americans, period. Because Americans are so brainwashed with the colonialist Western society, because anything they say at that point is poisoned by white supremacy. There's a lot of commonalities between our oppressions. They're an example of where we could be pretty quickly, and where we have been before. We see Joe Biden taking a pitiful stance, or non-stance at all, really. You see the U.S. government not trying to really take a side. You see CNN and all these news networks trying to make it that it's this equal exchange, focusing on the narrative of the Israelis. To talk about the Israelis that have faced consequences for their fascism, but they don't talk about the Palestinians who were a victim of that fascism. The same thing that was done to the natives, the same thing that Hitler did to the white Jewish and the Roma, it's the same thing that Israel has been trying to do to the Palestinians. Because they're people of color, we tend to look the other way. We tend to let them justify the murder of children and brown folks, saying that God gave them the right to do so. And any other belief system, any other nation will be torn apart based off the statements that the average Israeli believes, and that the government definitely believes. But because of what it is, we tend to act like they're not doing nothing wrong, that they're the victim, that they're the one surviving terrorism. But you know who's really being terrorized? The Palestinians who lose their homes, who get shot for walking too close to fences, those who had their whole land stolen. All they've tried to do is fight for their humanity, fight for the right to live, and fight for the right to exist. That is more than reasonable. I think it's on our job as those who live in the U.S. to show solidarity, one way or another. I once was invited to go on a hip-hop caravan to Palestine. Unfortunately, it never came about. But maybe it's about time we make that happen. Maybe it's about time that all us artists and all us content creators, YouTubers, whatever we want to call ourselves, step up. Because if Americans are there, eyes are watching. Do I have a solution? Of course I do. Give the Palestinians all their land back. Dismantle the state of Israel and make the Israeli people apply to the Palestinians for residency. Two-state solution, robbery solidified. There's no room for two states. There's only room for Palestine. Leave a comment below and let me know what the steps are that we should show to have solidarity with Palestine. To take action. To step up. Alright, thanks for rocking with me. I'm out of here. Deuces.
Walking through the crease and the cracks of the streets, struggling for some food and a bed to sleep, while trying to cause overthrow. I'm feeling weak, ideology buff.